Greetings and welcome to another Grenfell MediaWatch update. Today's edition I want to call some more equal than others, and yes, it's a nod to Orwell's Animal Farm. Now, Grenfell is on the front pages of newspapers once more, and this time we have a situation where survivors alongside potential fraudsters, we don't know for sure that they are being accused of a £1 million swindle. Now, fleshing out this story, it would seem that the council had notified the police that 15 people had registered as being tenants at a 3-bedroom flat in Grenfell, whilst initially only 4 had registered. Now, if you want a masterclass in a way that the media can use headlines to actually demonise and distort the truth, then you just need to look at the headlines that were published about Eamon Zada. Now, you'd have to read far deeper to get an idea of the truth, and that was essentially that Zada actually, well, his prosecutors even agreed that the cannabis oil that he was producing was for medicinal and personal usage. It was a judge who decided to act against the evidence and give him a suspended sentence, some community service and a fine. But what else has the media been reporting on? Well, it's recognised that Rydon, they're the contractors who actually did the refurbishment of Grenfell, had actually made a 50% increase in profit, taking their bounty to 20 million. And a nameless director who had an increase of 8% on his salary, taking his wage up to £500,000. Now, I think it's the Evening Standard that said that this should sicken the Grenfell community, but why just the Grenfell community? Why not everybody? If you want to know what's sickening, then it's the fact that there's been no extended media coverage on the fact that there's a government-approved fire expert who signed off on cladding similar to that was used in Grenfell. That's sickening. But then it is good to see there's been some coverage on the plight of businesses in the area. But if the media really wants to do something to help the Grenfell community, then perhaps it can help locate Mellon. Now, he's the deputy chair of the council, I should say former deputy chair of the council. He's the guy who's responsible for the refurbishment of Grenfell, that put the cladding on it in the first place, and also director of socially conscious capital. Now, he's been nowhere to see when it comes to these public meetings. Where is he? How come he can't face public scrutiny? Don't we pay his salaries? I mean, I'm pretty sure he still collects them. He hasn't resigned. And talking about democracy, when are we going to get a date for this debate? It's been some 17 days since the 100,000 figure has been reached. The government seems to take on average up to 2 months before it actually gives a date. I looked on the website and there was something like only 12 petitions out of thousands that are launched every single year that have actually been debated. And I noticed another curious fact. Out of those 12, I noticed that a few of them were nowhere near that 100,000 figure, which makes me believe that that number is actually some arbitrary figure, and the government really just does what it wants. It debates what it wants. But interestingly enough, we have had a peak view of what a debate could look like, and that's because of the brilliant intervention of Richard Burgon. Now, he asked a question in Parliament about broadening the panel, and the response from the Secretary of State for Justice was, to be frankly, disgusting.
Does the Minister agree with survivors and bereaved families who are calling for a broad inquiry panel, as there was in the watershed inquiry into the death of Stephen Lawrence?
Secretary of State.
I believe that the processes have been set up, and the inquiry led by Sir Martin Morbick is the right approach, and that the focus should be on ensuring that that inquiry is able to make progress rather than trying to in any way undermine it.
In essence, he's accusing anyone who's in favour of widening the panel of actually trying to undermine Morbick's inquiry. Doesn't see that actually broadening the panel, like Stephen Lawrence, can actually lead to a watershed moment that actually brings about truth and justice. Anyway, I suspect I'm one of many who found David Gauke's statement quite chilling and revealing, especially in his position as a Secretary of State for Justice. Now, if that's a preview of the government's position on the debate, perhaps that's the reason why it's going to take a long time before they even decide whether they're going to actually have a debate. Look, we know the government has it within its financial capabilities to ensure that another massacre like Grenfell never happens again. We know that because of the £817 million which they have chosen not to spend on social housing, when they could have done, as Corbyn suggested, spend it on sprinklers on other buildings. Anyway, people keep asking me, how can they help? What can they do to support the Grenfell community? And there's many different ways. But I think one of the most basics is share the message. Use any platform. I mean, if you want to be cheeky, you can even ask the Red Cross for their money back, because at least 84 families, even today, are still housed in emergency temporary accommodation. But there are many ways. And there's that actress, Frances McDormand, and she used her award of Best Actress at the Oscars to put the campaign back in the media spotlight. And that's what we can do. Wherever you are, whenever there's an award ceremony, any kind of platform, use it to spread the message, to raise awareness. And when I say use any platform, I mean use any platform. And saying that, I want to big up the families, the activists and all those involved in meeting the UN representative, who actually filed a report which actually exposed the fact that the UK had actually breached the human rights, or potentially has breached the human rights, we know it has, of residents prior to the massacre and afterwards. And that's the kind of assistance that we need. We kind of need that focus, amplifying the voices, not just on the national stage, but also on the international stage. But of course, not everyone has access to high-powered delegates. And for those other people who want to support, then I guess you can go on a walk. It could be one walk, it could be all the walks. But they're now taking place in London, Liverpool, Manchester, Bristol. And that's just one way you can show solidarity. One way that you can show that you care. One way to keep the topic alive until the families get the justice they deserve. So I'm going to close as always. Apologies for all the sniffles. I think I've tried to edit most of them out. Just recovering from the flu. 2 days in bed, it wasn't fun. And I want to say, may the ancestors continue to guide and protect us. Ashe.